In this video, I'm taking you along as I experiment with 12 different types of transparent papers, including the one I most often use, and together we'll discover the tissues that work best and in what situations. So be sure to stay to the end for the big reveal. Hello, my name is Catherine Rains. I'm a mixed media collage artist, and welcome to Tune In Tuesday, where I share art demos to expand your mixed media toolbox. If you see value in this video, I would deeply appreciate a thumbs up, and if you would subscribe to my channel below. Links for most of the tissue papers I used in this experiment are down below under the word more. And while you're there, you might also want to check out my free 5-lesson online workshop, Collage Kickstart, where I teach you how to use all the collage papers, including tissues, taught during Tune In Tuesday to make fabulous collages the very first try. So let's get into experimenting with 12 types of transparent papers. I've pulled out all of the translucent type papers in my collection. Some of I've never even used before, like medical exam paper. I've always wanted to experiment with it. Just been sitting on my shelf. I also have a few different types of acid-free paper, cheap tissue paper from the drugstore, tracing paper. This is Teabag filter paper. I've got 7 more, including the type of tissue that I typically use. I'm going to be experimenting with all of these papers to see how they react when I put a stencil over them and either put molding paste over the stencil on top of the tissue, or my other favorite thing to put over stencils and tissue is golden acrylic iridescent gold deep fine. I'm going to start my experiments with the tissue paper I use most often. This is a Uline gift grade tissue paper, very cheap. I've pulled out 2 of my favorite stencils. This is actually the one that I created for joggles and my other favorite one that I didn't create. So I'm going to put acrylic paint on one, molding paste on the other, and I will label this ahead of time. Uline gift grade. I'm pretty sure it's not acid free. So I'm going to start with just putting gold paint over the stencil. There's no one way to do this. I could stamp it on, but this is faster just for my experiment. That's good enough. And now I'll put some molding paste on this one. If you've taken my Collage Kickstart class, this is something that I show in that class. Okay, first one done. Now I just need to let this dry and I'll go on to the other 11 types of paper. So for my second one, I've got inexpensive drugstore gift wrap. I'm very curious to see how this is different than my very inexpensive gift wrap paper I've been using for a very long time. And now molding paste. Got a piece of deli paper. This is the kind of thing you would put to cover sandwiches, to wrap them, to protect them. It's a little bit of a waxy surface. Even my pen didn't really want to adhere to this. I have medical exam paper, and I've just put some gloves on because I realized I was getting my hands full of paint and molding paste. But this paper I've had in my stash, I don't know, maybe a couple years, and I've always wanted to try it. So here's my try. Another artist said this is just an amazing translucent paper, so we'll see how it reacts to the type of collages that I love to make. This is acid-free gift wrap. I'm not sure why you would need acid-free gift wrap, but I have it. So this is a little bit smaller piece, so I'm just going to put half the stencil on here. This is acid-free, wet strength tea bag paper. So we've got tracing paper from Strathmore. So this weight is very similar to the deli paper, but it doesn't have the waxy sheen to it. This is Masa paper, M-A-S-A. An artist a long time ago said I needed to try this for, I thought, translucent papers, but this is a pretty heavy, opaque paper. So I'm not thinking this is going to work, but since I had it in my stash of translucent papers, I'm giving it a go. Because you never know. Maybe when I apply matte medium to it, I'll get an effect I didn't expect. This is Teabag filter paper that comes in a roll like this. This is another brand of wet strength tissue paper. It's amazing how many different types there are. This one is actually shiny on both sides. This has a very different texture than other ones that I've tried. This is another type of acid-free tissue paper. The brand is Factory Direct Party Multi-Purpose. I think this is something you would actually put in gifts. So it's a pretty light type of tissue paper in terms of weight, but it is acid-free. And finally, Spectra wet strength. This is probably one of the best known ones that many artists use. Now this is my 12th paper that I've tested, and the little holes on my stencil are beginning to fill up with molding paste, but it'll still work in terms of my experiment. The holes, the little molding paste dots will just be a little smaller because they're being filled in from previous papers I've done. And here are my 12 different types of tissue paper with molding paste and acrylic paint. So I'll let these dry for about an hour, and then we will complete our experiment. All of my papers are now dry, and I've separated them into two basic categories. The first category are tissue papers of different varieties, and then I've also got a category of unusual transparent papers like medical exam paper, tea bag paper, tracing paper. So I'm going to take these two sets of papers and glue them into my sketchbook as basically a record of what these different papers will do. So I am going to take, for instance, my Uline gift grade paper, which is the one I use most often in my collages, and I'm going to take a little piece of this molding paste and a little piece of the stencil acrylic paper, and I'm going to glue it onto a light value and a dark value. And this basically simulates what it would look like if I was actually gluing it into a collage. These kinds of papers are what I use as a top layer or a finishing touch layer in my collages. And what I want to do is just tear off a little bit of the molding paste. Actually, I'm going to tear off two pieces of the molding paste. One to put down under the light color, and another piece to use on the dark value paper so we can see the difference between the two. So I'll put those there and see how they go translucent. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the gold paper. Just tear out a little piece of this and put it on either side of here. We want to look at these side by side to see how they work differently. with the same kind of medium on top of them. Before I do anything, I'm going to label this right here so I know which paper I'm working with. So this is Uline Gift Tissue. And what I most often use for glue is matte medium, which is a very liquid medium. I think I'm going to start with just the molding paste all by itself first. I'll put a little bit of matte medium down. Get rid of the excess tissue paper, and then just glue it down. Now I often put it on top as well, just so that I can get a really good, basically I want it to be very secure against the bottom paper. As I would suspect, this is very translucent. All you see is the molding paste against the yellow. I don't see any of the extra tissue paper. Let's try it against a dark value paper. Now the wetness of this helps the tissue paper actually kind of so-called melt into the substrate, or in this case, it's just my collage paper. And if you look closely, you can see some of the tissue paper in between the molding paste dots. However, it's gone, for the most part, fairly translucent. But the way I make this look even more translucent is I just take a sharp implement. This is just a skewer, a wooden skewer, and I just scrape away on the edges while the tissue paper is very wet. And I can create the illusion that that tissue paper isn't there, even though in the middle here you can see it. So I'm just pressing, you know, any glue out, but along the edges is where the tissue paper is most visible. So this is a typical thing that you would see in most of my collages, since this is the tissue paper I use. And so if I were actually doing a collage for real, meaning I was, you know, we're actually composing something, I would spend more time, you know, getting all this excess tissue off around the edges. The very light value, you can't see the edges of the tissue paper at all. Let's see how it does against the dark. So if you look closely, you can see, you know, some tissue paper around the sides. You could also do this with water, by the way. Just do a little squirt on here, and you could also move off the excess tissue. At least with the Uline you can. So that's good enough for now. I know that this is kind of the baseline, the paper I usually use. And let's see if I can come up with a better paper that I like even more than this one. And I already like this one a lot. Next up, this is a Drugstore gift wrap paper. And I'm thinking this is going to be very similar to the Uline gift tissue. It's intended for the same thing. So we have the Drugstore gift wrap paper. So I cut a couple little pieces of my molding paste. I do take the time just to get out as much of the excess glue, just by pushing it out with my fingers. Do the same. I still have a lot of glue on my brush. Put it down here. And again, I'm going to take the time to push that glue out, which helps make it look more transparent. And this is looking pretty equal to the first one, which is what I was suspecting would happen, since they are kind of the same thing, although they're different brands. So just to make things equal, I'm going to take some of that tissue away. Make sure that, you know, I'm kind of comparing apples to apples here, doing the same thing to them. But this, you know, this is fairly transparent. It appears equal to this one when I scrape away the edges of the tissue. So I like that. And this one is equal to this one. You know, you can see it's completely transparent when put against a very light value. A couple pieces of gold. I do this at the same time. So again, completely translucent when it goes against the light. And this is going to be similar to this when I take away a little bit of the tissue along the edges. Now I've got acid-free gift wrap. I just bought this off Amazon, thinking that acid-free is probably better than non-acid-free for a collage. Now this one is maybe a little more delicate, but it's it doesn't want to go down all the way. So let's see, I think it's just because maybe I'm rushing it. I don't think it's because of the quality of the paper, but you never know. Let's see. So what I'm trying to do here is push out all the bubbles, which again will make it look more translucent if I get the tissue paper to lay very flat. And it is not wanting to do that. So I'm going to add a little more matte medium to it. The one that is against the light value is reacting just like the other ones, but it's the dark value is usually the issue in terms of trying to get it to go translucent. By the way, I use the terms translucent and transparent kind of interchangeably. I'm sure there's a different definition for each one of these, but to me, it's kind of the same thing. Moving on to Spectra Wet Strength. This is a tissue paper that I know a lot of artists use. Pretty much all the tissues of the light color value are pretty equal in terms of transparency. Now this one is a pretty sturdy paper, which I like. So this is going to be easier for me to scrape off. This one was not near as easy. I'm putting a little more glue on top just to see if I can press out some of the glue that's underneath the tissue, which makes it also look more transparent. So having a lot of the glue or the matte medium down here and pushing against the tissue makes it look more transparent. So I'm already seeing more of a transparent look. So I'm going to try out a second type of wet strength. The brand is called Yaji. Never heard of this before. Just one of the ones that I found in my vast collection of papers that I haven't necessarily used. I just come across them, I buy them and think I'm going to use them, but I end up going back to the papers. I end up going back to this one, my Uline one, because I just know it works. But I think wet strength sounds like a good idea. So this one's a very sturdy paper. It is not as easy to scrape off the edges. So I'm actually going to put more of this on here. So the fact that it's so sturdy, I'm thinking this would be a great tissue paper. Actually, either one of these, the wet strengths, they'd be great for jelly printing, which is not something that I do in my work. Usually, I do jelly prints, but that's not my normal way of making collage papers. But sometimes having a little bit of a stronger paper with jelly printing works quite well. And this one is quite sturdy. You can pull off the edges though, which I like. So it is working as long as it's very wet. Next one is a brand called Factory Direct Multi-Party Multi-Purpose Acid Free. Okay, the tissues are done. They're a little bit of, this one's still a little wet, so I am going to put a little piece of deli paper right here just to protect this when I close the page. And we're gonna do the more non-traditional type translucent papers. And we're gonna start with medical exam paper, which is something I've been very curious about. I've seen many, many artists use this, and I've owned this paper forever and never used it. So let's see what this does. Now this has got a light color, but it's also got a little bit of dark value as the under paper as well. So part of this is going to be really easy to make it look translucent. And there will be a little bit of tissue showing where the dark is. So it's a little bit different. Actually, that's looking pretty good in terms of going transparent. Wow, looks good. So this paper is holding up really, really well to the scraping, probably much better than the tissue. So the dots are staying in place, which they don't always do with the tissue paper, but I can get all the excess paper easily off around the edges. Next up is the Teabag filters. Now, Teabag filters are a little bit harder to scrape the excess away. So it's hard to get it off. I can get it off, but I'm going to end up taking away a lot of the dots as I do it. So I don't think I'm going to do any more. So you just have to know that this particular paper will not be as translucent as other ones, but sometimes you don't need complete translucency either. Melt it on the light one, This one, not so much. You can see the tissue quite a bit. And because this paper is so sturdy, it's hard to scrape away the edges. So this would be a fantastic paper to use for gel printing because it's very, very sturdy. However, it's not going to go as transparent. Next up is Teabag paper, acid-free and wet strength. So this is a fine look, it's just you're not going to see as much of the paper underneath it. Again, light value, you can't see much of it. Many people over the years have asked me if you could use tracing paper as the base for the molding paste papers. And of course you can, but my guess is this is also not going to be as translucent, transparent as, let's say, the medical exam paper is. It's going to react more like this is my guess. So I'm just going to press out as much as I can all the extra glue underneath, see if I can get it to really lie very flat against the paper itself. Can't really scrape off the edges like I can with other papers. Yeah, it just takes off the whole paper when I do it. Tracing paper, because it holds up so well, this is much thicker than tissue paper. This is probably also a really good choice for jelly printing. But again, it's not going to be very transparent. That looks fine against the light value. Thinking jelly paper is going to be similar to the tracing paper. It's a pretty thick paper. So you can definitely see what's underneath. It's just not going to be completely transparent like you get over here. So I'll try just for kicks to scrape this away. But yeah, you can't scrape it away. Now the last one is massa paper. I don't have a lot of hope that this is going to work, but someone told me a long time ago this could be a transparent paper. I'm thinking that's not true. I'm thinking this is probably more of a collage paper that I would put paint on as opposed to do the molding paste or these stencil dots on. And I am correct. It's not translucent at all, but we'll finish it up. So I thought I was done with my experiments, but alas, as I was looking for links to put in the description of this YouTube video, I discovered that the Spectra tissue I don't think is actually wet strength. It is a bleeding tissue, and I believe it is acid-free, but I wanted to find another wet strength tissue that I liked because I actually don't like this one. It didn't have the results I wanted. So I found another tissue that a lot of artists use. I've heard of it, but I just never owned it myself. It's called Carnival wet strength tissue. So I got little samples of these, and I thought I would see if these worked better as a wet strength tissue. And I've left some more room that I could do some more experiments at a later date. So I'm scraping away whatever tissue I can with my little wooden skewer here and see how this tissue performs compared to the ones I know that I already like. So it is a little tougher to push the tissue away, which is actually good in many ways because that means it's a really strong tissue. But I want to make sure that I can get that extra tissue off to create the illusion that my little dots are there without any tissue around them. So I'll just finish this off by putting my gold stencil paper on there and see how that does. And I'm quite pleased overall with this paper. This is a keeper. I'm glad I experimented with one more at the end. So now that all of my experiments are finished, including my 13th paper that I added to this, let's look at the different variety of tissue papers and what you might want to consider using depending on the project you're working on. As I suspected, the two cheapest tissues, the Uline gift grade and just tissue that you get out of a drugstore, they worked beautifully. They're not acid-free, they're not wet strength, but they act like wet strength. They're actually very good to work with. The acid-free gift wrap was pretty good. The Spectra was also good, but again, I don't think it's really wet strength. I think it's just a bleeding tissue. This wet strength, which is called Yeji, I didn't like so much. It shows a lot of the paper underneath. It was hard to work with. And the factory direct acid-free paper didn't like at all. Now, these were the unusual papers. Medical exam paper is absolutely my favorite out of all of them. I actually want to keep using this along with my Uline paper because the dots adhere to paper really well, and you can also scrape away the extra really well. Teabag filter was pretty good. I like this as well. But the Teabag acid-free wet strength didn't go very transparent. The fact that tracing paper and deli paper both didn't go completely translucent, that's perfectly fine, because in some cases, you may want the effect of having a little bit of tissue paper underneath. So all of these papers, because they're a little heavier in weight, are great for jelly prints. For my collages, I really prefer something that goes as transparent as possible. So I would choose the medical exam paper. And the Carnival wet strength, I like a lot. The only downside of this is that it was very hard to scrape any tissue away from the side, although it did go pretty transparent compared to my other wet strength tissue, which is my Teabag paper and my Yahi paper. This one is definitely a winner. If you were going to put either molding paste or acrylic paint on stencils on light values, they all worked with the exception of massa paper. They went completely transparent. You can't see the tissue paper. It's only when you are putting it against a dark value paper that I am particularly concerned with getting something that really kind of so-called melts into the paper so you can't see it. By the way, it doesn't really melt into the paper, but it goes transparent enough that it looks like it did. So I encourage you to do your own experiment. Take whatever tissues you have and use a light color value, a dark color value to paste your experiments on and see what you like. Or just take the papers that I have here and use the experiments that have already been done for you. No reason to actually do them because I've done them. But you might actually have some tissue papers that are not one of these 13 that you want to see how transparent they go. I hope you enjoy your own experiments, or I hope that the ones I showed you here work for you as well. To learn many more collage making techniques, check out the links that are about to appear right here. And be sure to join my free 5-lesson online workshop, Collage Kickstart. The link to sign up is under the word more below. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would be deeply grateful if you would. And I'll see you here next week for another Tune In Tuesday.